Hey everyone! So I'm going to take a little bit of time in this video to explain Project Part 3 to you. So Project Part 3 is of course the rough draft of your research paper. So it is time, after weeks of choosing a topic, narrowing your focus, constructing a claim, and conducting your research, it is now time to put it all together and write a rough draft of your research essay. Okay? Please be aware that this rough draft is not just taking what you wrote in Project Part 1 and what you wrote in Project Part 2 and just putting it together. Project Part 1 and Project Part 2 are just laying the groundwork for your ideas and helping you find your sources and figure out what your main points were going to be. This part right here, Project Part 3, is a draft of the actual essay, a rough draft of the paper, okay? So, you're going to find a bulleted list here in the instructions of some items, that just reminding you of all the elements that are required of a college level essay and what you need to keep in mind in terms of it being a research paper specifically. So we learned about essay basics back in the first couple weeks of the course. We looked at introductory paragraphs, thesis statements, body paragraphs, how to make sure your body paragraphs are focused, how to make sure you have a good transitional topic sentence, how to make sure you have good supporting details, good coherence, right? And then we looked at concluding paragraphs. Those are the elements that any type of essay should have. You're doing a research essay, so you also have to make sure that you have incorporated the components of research in APA format as well, right? So all of that together in your draft. So I'll go through that list in just a moment, the bulleted list. It's not, an exhaustive list, but it is a really good guide to make sure that you have sort of covered all your bases. Now, it's okay if your draft is not great quality yet. It is a rough draft. You're going to be getting very detailed feedback from me, all right? So you're gonna see where you need to improve, things you need to change, things that aren't right at all, right? So, don't worry, don't stress too much about perfection. Just get it done. Try to put as much effort into it as you can, because the better the rough draft is, the less revision you'll have to do for the final draft, but it's okay if it's a rough draft. What I do ask is that it's a complete draft. So, try to make sure you have it in APA format, that you have your title page and your page numbers, right? Do your best there. If it's wrong, I'll tell you it's wrong and what needs to be done differently, okay? Make sure you have an introductory paragraph and do your best to have that thesis statement, to have your claim there at the end of it. Make sure you have body paragraphs for your main points, okay? If I feel like it would be better to do it in a different order, I'll tell you that. If I feel like one of those main points, isn't developed enough, I'll tell you that. If you have one main point that's a super long paragraph that really should probably be broken up into several paragraphs, I'll tell you that, okay? But try to have that introductory paragraph with your thesis statement, body paragraphs for your main points, and a concluding paragraph, okay? And then make sure you have your references page. I will tell you, I will give you very detailed feedback on it, okay? But the more you give me, the more I can give you, okay? All right, so remember the goal is a 4 to 5 page paper, not including the title page or the references page. That's 4 to 5 pages of actual essay, from introductory paragraph to concluding paragraph, okay? So do your best to stay close to that guideline. If you turn in a paper that's, 3 3/4 pages long, I'm not going to hand it back to you and give you a 0 and say, no, this isn't long enough, redo it. No. It's a guideline, okay? But try to keep it in mind. as you're working on your draft. If you finish your draft and it's only 2 pages long, chances are you have some work to do. You can go ahead and turn it in, and I'll tell you what, you know. But again, the closer you get to the expectations, the more feedback I can give you, and possibly the less work you'll have to do in revisions. Okay? Remember that you're supposed to have 3 to 4 sources, at least. Okay? Remember Project Part 3, it's worth 25 points. It's just a pass or fail. If you submit it, you get the 25 points. If you don't submit it, you get a 0 until you do submit it. Right? I have, though, in the assignment instructions, I have attached the rubric that I will be using to grade your final draft for Project Part 4. You can look at that rubric now and see where your points are going to be coming from, what I'm going to be looking for when I grade the final draft. And that can be beneficial as well. Okay? You don't have to look at it. It's there for your convenience, for your information. Okay? And remember, Project Part 3 is a mandatory course component. It has to be submitted because you have to receive my feedback on it in order to submit Project Part 4. Because you have to see where you need to work on things. You need my feedback so that you can make revisions and turn in a better version for your final draft. Okay? So, some submission requirements. Again, these are more of the guidelines, the reminders to help you make sure that you have as complete a draft as possible, right? So make sure that it is typed and double-spaced in an appropriate font. Remember, APA format calls for either like Calibri 11 times New Roman 12-point font, Arial 12-point font. I believe, you know, in the PowerPoint and video we talked about some other font styles that are now more accepted as well. Those are the 3 standard ones, though, so, and they're easy to read. So just make sure that you're using an acceptable font style and font size. Make sure that you adhere to APA style guidelines, including your cover page, proper, you know, page numbers. If you're unsure how to accomplish those, you can go back to the lesson where I covered it. And then I'll also be giving you feedback on it. You need a solid introductory paragraph that grabs the reader's attention, introduces your topic, and ends with your thesis statement. You should have several main points that you discuss in order to support that thesis statement. Each of those main points should be explored in as many paragraphs as necessary. Remember, a paragraph contains one idea. So if you have a main point, one main point, but that main point has several ideas within it, each of those ideas should be its own paragraph. Do not think that each main point can only have one paragraph. Each main point can have several paragraphs. Okay? Remember, especially if you're building upon the same, you know, idea and they're just building, but it's all connected to that same main point. You know, you're going to want to discuss them in separate paragraphs, smaller chunks, right? All right. Each paragraph should contain a transitional topic sentence that introduces the main idea of the paragraph, the specific focus of that specific paragraph. Remember, you know, the transition should sort of link us from the previous paragraph to the current paragraph. Okay? Each paragraph should be fully developed. Okay? Remember, we want specific and adequate support. Most of that is going to be from your own ideas and thoughts, but some of it will need to come from your source material as well. Make sure whenever you do use information from a source, whether it's summary, paraphrase, or quote, that you are providing a citation for that source. Even if the citation isn't correct here in your rough draft, it's okay. I will give you feedback on it. But do not forget to at least try to cite each source every time you use information from one of them. Okay? All right. Each paragraph should end with some sort of point sentence, right? That sort of wraps up that paragraph and reminds us of what the main focus was of that particular paragraph. Remember that, especially in those body paragraphs where you are covering your main points, you always want to begin a paragraph with your own ideas and words. That transitional topic sentence should be yours. You want to start discussing the idea, the main focus of that paragraph, and lead us into any source material you might be using. Remember, after you cite that source, you then want to follow up on that source material and explain it, connect it to your main idea of that paragraph and why it's important, why it's relevant. And then you end a paragraph with your own ideas and words also. So anytime you use source material, I would say 98% of the time, the source material should be somewhere towards the middle of your paragraph. Not at the beginning, because you want to begin with your own transitional topic sentence. And it can't come at the end, because you always have to follow up on source material and explain it and connect it and tell us why it's relevant, why you used it in the first place, right? So that means something of your own has to come after your source material, right? Okay. You want a concluding paragraph that not only reminds us of your claim and your main points, but also leaves us with a feeling that we've come full circle with our, any of the questions that have been answered, and that you leave us with some sort of final thought. All right. Remember, the essay needs to use source material from at least 3 to 4 sources. Any information obtained from a source must be cited with a proper APA parenthetical citation. Failure to do so constitutes plagiarism and could result in a failing grade. Obviously, this is the rough draft. I will give you feedback on it if it's not correct. But when we get to the final draft, if those mistakes have not been corrected, then we have problems, right? Any source cited within the body of the essay must appear on your references page. Any source listed on your references page must be used and cited at least once in the body of the essay. Everything has to match up, remember? Make sure that your writing shows a level of voice, tone, and formality that is appropriate for a college level course. Remember, this is a formal research paper. So make sure that your tone and your choice of words are appropriate for that. Remember too that APA format, we don't use personal pronouns. We do not refer to ourselves in APA format. It's much more formal, okay? Try to watch out for any spelling or grammar and mechanics errors, right? We've been covering some very common grammar and mechanics errors. So, refer back to those lessons if you aren't sure, right? And remember, I will be running every single rough draft through a plagiarism checker, all right? So be sure that the draft you submit is 100% yours. You're using source materials, so there will be sections of the draft where the ideas or the words are not yours, but that's why we cite them, right? We cite our sources so that it's clear, hey, these weren't my ideas, these aren't my exact words. I got it from this source, but it helps support my point, and here's why, right? And again, if the citations aren't correct, we can fix that. That's really not a big deal. We can fix it if it's wrong. But if you have just copied and pasted things, even if it's just a sentence here or there, then we're going to have problems. All right? So every single draft gets put through a plagiarism checker. Right? Okay, so that's everything you need to try to accomplish with your rough draft. Right? The closer you can get to checking off each of those bullet points, the closer you are to a good version that will require less revision for the final draft. But do not stress yourself out over it. Just do the best you can. okay? I'm going to give you so much feedback. I spend probably 2 to 3 hours on each rough draft. So you're going to have a good bit of feedback from me so that you'll know exactly what you need to work on before you submit the final draft. Okay? Alright. Just do your best. You have 2 weeks to work on this. Alright? It's being assigned here in week 6, but it's not due until the week 7 homework is due. Right? So you have 2 weeks. Please try to have it submitted on time, because in week 8, your assignment for that week will be to conduct a peer review for one of your classmates. You're going to be exchanging research papers. You're going to be exchanging rough drafts. And when you get your classmate's rough draft, you're going to read that draft, and then there's going to be questions that you're going to answer about that draft. Okay? So if everyone has the rough draft completed on time, then everyone will be able to complete the peer review on time as well, and not have to wait on their assigned classmate to get that draft finished, which then puts that student behind on getting the peer review completed. And that's why I'm giving you 2 weeks to do this, right? 2 weeks to get this draft submitted. So what you're going to see here at the very bottom of the instructions is just a little bit about that peer review assignment that will happen in week 8. So in order to do the peer review, you have been assigned a classmate to whom you will send your rough draft. Once they receive your draft, in week 8, they will then conduct a peer review and submit that assignment in order to receive their points for completing the peer review. Alright? So you're going to send your draft to your assigned classmate. That classmate, once, they're going to have your draft possibly before week 8 gets here, but once week 8 does get here, they're going to read your draft and answer the questions on the peer review worksheet. They're going to submit the peer review worksheet to get their points for the peer review assignment. Your points come from you filling out the worksheet after you read your classmate's draft. All right? Once they submit that peer review worksheet, I will then send it to you so that you can read their feedback on your rough draft. Okay? So, this means, you're going to send yours to your assigned classmate, but someone else has been assigned you. So you're going to receive someone's draft as well. You're going to send yours to someone else is going to send theirs to you. Once you receive their draft, you wait until week 8 comes, and then you fill out the peer review worksheet after you read their draft. You submit the worksheet, you get the points. I'll send your completed worksheet back to them so they get your feedback. Okay? Now, there's going to be a video in the instructions for the peer review assignment in week 8. So I'm not going to go into the specifics of the questions that you'll be answering or anything like that. That video will cover it when that assignment gets here. But what we want to do right now, as we're working on Project Part 3, is to be aware of that peer review assignment in the not-so-distant future, so that when you submit Project Part 3 to me on Brightspace, you will at the same time send your rough draft in an email to your assigned classmate. You might be done with your rough draft by the end of week 6. Send it to your assigned classmate at the same time, even if it's in week 6. You might get finished with it sometime in week 7, submit it to me on Brightspace, and then send it to your classmate at the same time. If you're getting that draft in right at the due date, Sunday of week 7, submit it to me on Brightspace, send it to your assigned classmate. Okay? How do you know who your assigned classmate is? You're going to see a list at the very bottom of these instructions, right? So every student is listed, and then their email address is next to their name. You're going to find your name on the list. Your name. Once you find your name, you're going to look for the student who appears right underneath you. And that is who you're going to send your draft to. If you are the last person on the list, you will send your rough draft to the first person on the list. Okay? And then that's all you have to do for right now. That's all you have to worry about for that peer review assignment. Don't worry about anything else just yet. Just know that part of Project Part 3 here is preparing for it. So when you have your rough draft completed and ready to submit, you upload it on Brightspace in the assignment spot for me to read, and then you attach it in an email to the person whose name is under yours on the list. And that way they have it, and it's there, and whenever they're ready to work on the peer review assignment in week 8, they have your draft, they can complete it, and everything's good, right? If you happen to receive an email from one of your classmates with their rough draft attached, and it's only week 6 or maybe the beginning of week 7, just save it. Either download the draft and save it to your computer, or just save the email in a special folder there in your email system, right? And then when it's time, you can come back and find it and then complete the peer review. So just because you receive an email with the draft attached in week 6 or week 7 doesn't mean you have to try to do the peer review. You don't have access to it until week 8, okay? But just hang on to it. Don't lose it, okay? So try to do your best to have the rough draft completed on time, so that way you can submit it to me, and I will have plenty of time to give everyone proper feedback, and that will ensure that everyone has a draft ready to go and review when it's time to do the peer review, and nobody's going to be waiting on anybody else to get their draft submitted because they're submitting it late. Okay? So again, it's all explained there. You know, you'll see the class list, find your name, send yours to the student after you. If you're the person on the bottom, send yours to the person at the top, right? And then that's all you have to do for now. Alright? So that's Project Part 3. I know it was a lot of information to give you, but again, the better you do on the rough draft, ideally, the less revisions you'll have to do for the final draft, right? But do not stress yourself out a lot over this. It is a rough draft. It's okay if it's not perfect. It's not supposed to be. I'm not expecting it to be. Alright? I will give you feedback. You will know exactly what you need to do before you turn in the final draft. Okay? So, do your best. Make sure you submit it on time and send it to your assigned classmate. And if you have any questions or run into any problems, please let me know.